We just got back from Arches National Park, where we saw so many unbelievable natural wonders. One of the many things that stands out in our memories is how magnificent the diverse arch formations can be. The fact that these arches have stood for so many thousands of years is breathtaking to think about. But how were these arches formed? How many arches have failed to survive the multiple centuries of harsh weather and erosion? And how long will the arches we saw remain standing? The arches we saw inside of Moab are in various stages of formation and of erosion. One arch with the thickest upper portion of rock across the top is Windows Arch. Arches such as this one were once a single gigantic piece of rock. The salt rock under the sand formations was under too much pressure and began to slide. The surface rock began to shift, which helped form arches. The movement of the rock shaped the surface and started to strip away the newest rock layers. Water filled in the cracks of the larger rock and took out all loose sediment and debris. During cold periods, ice formations formed in the cracks and applied pressure to the rocks, causing them to break. This formed the arches. If you apply this to the Windows Arch, we can deduce that Windows Arch had not had as much erosion as many other arches.
Several arches we saw have had more erosion. Double window, Mazal arch, delicate arch, skyline arch, and dune arch. Sand all had suffered more wear and tear. But the thinnest arch of all is landscape arch. Even though the landscape arch is thin, it is still quite stable because of the line of thrust. A line of thrust is an imaginary line that runs through a figure, such as an arch, and keeps the pressure stable and balanced. So as long as an arch has a line of thrust, it can carry a great amount of pressure without breaking. In 2008, Landscape Arch had a massive piece of rock fall off of it, and yet it is still standing. Thanks to its line of thrust, we can assume that the Landscape Arch was much more massive thousands of years ago, and slowly eroded as the year went by. How long will thin arches such as landscape be able to sustain a line of thrust before eventually they crumble under the pressure?
There's not an accurate amount of years that the arch will stand for. It could be several months or thousands of years more. If there is no pressure, such as erosion, at all, then arches like the landscape arch with the line of thrust can stand for maybe tens of thousands of years. Since this is reality, there will be erosion and other kinds of peer pressure that will make the arches fall. Different types of erosion are wind, rain, and animal influences. Animals, you say? If animals need to scratch their backs or even their horns, they may scratch themselves on the arch. Even we humans, the most innocent of all forms of erosion, can cause the arches to fall with our brilliant actions. These forces can either act individually or work together to cause a small crack in the arch. You might not think this crack is such a big deal, but in the future this crack will eventually spread through the arch and collapse right before our eyes. So the previous question, our answer is yes, the arch can and will crumble.
The life of an arch nicely parallels to the human life cycle. If you think about human life, a baby is born and over time grows into full maturity. An adult at the peak of their life thrives, but eventually, when a human life reaches middle age, the body stops advancing and starts to disintegrate, much like the arches. One day, in old age, the body shuts down and dies, just as an arch will eventually collapse. Just as we do not know the exact time when they are going to break down, we as well do not know our exact day of death. Experiencing human life is an amazing miracle and should never be taken for granted. Similarly, the natural beauty of the arches should not be taken for granted. It should be appreciated and admired. We should be grateful for both life and the natural beauty that Hashem has put on this earth. Experiencing our trips to arches remind us how important every moment we share together is, and how there is a time to experience all emotions in life. Like it says in Kohelet,
L'chol zman ve'et l'chol chafat, tachat hashemayim.
to everything there is a season, and to every time a purpose under the heaven.